Family crises. They can either tear us apart or transform us. And today's ancient story about Jacob's family shows us how a single violent act sparked a chain reaction that changed an entire community forever.
You know what fascinates me about this account? How brutally honest it is about human nature. We're not getting some sanitized version of events here.
Well, that's exactly right. The story begins when Jacob's daughter Dinah is violently assaulted by Shechem, the local ruler's son. And what happens next shows how quickly violence can spiral out of control.
The text is remarkably progressive for its time in how it handles the assault. There's no victim blaming whatsoever, which was pretty rare in ancient literature.
And here's where things get really interesting. Instead of seeking justice through proper channels, Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, devised this elaborate scheme for revenge.
They essentially weaponized their religious practice, right? Convincing all the men of the city to get circumcised before massacring them while they're recovering.
The scale of their revenge is just staggering. Historical records show ancient Near Eastern cities typically had populations of 500 to 1,000 people. So we're talking about the slaughter of potentially hundreds of innocent men.
That raises such difficult questions about generational trauma. How violence often begets more violence in this terrible cycle.
You know what's fascinating? Studies show that exposure to violence actually changes brain chemistry and can affect decision-making for generations. We're seeing that play out right here in this ancient text.
So, what finally breaks this cycle? Because there's this turning point where things start to shift.
Well, it's when God tells Jacob to return to Bethel. And here's the key detail. Jacob finally steps up as a spiritual leader. He tells his whole household to get rid of their foreign gods and literally change their clothes as this powerful symbol of transformation.
That physical act of changing clothes, it's like an ancient version of what psychologists now call embodied cognition, where physical actions can help reshape our thinking and behavior.
And yet, and this is what makes it feel so real, even after the spiritual renewal, the family continues to face challenges. Rachel dies in childbirth. Reuben commits this terrible act with his father's concubine.
Life doesn't suddenly become perfect just because they had this moment of transformation. That feels very true to human experience.
You know what's particularly striking? The long-term consequences. The tribes of Simeon and Levi actually end up scattered among the other tribes later in history, a direct result of their ancestors' actions here.
Though in an unexpected twist, the Levites become the priestly tribe. It's like their judgment gets transformed into this unique calling.
And that really speaks to the heart of this story, how divine grace can work through human failure. Archaeological evidence shows Bethel was actually a major religious center for centuries after these events.
That's such a powerful point about transformation. Not that our past gets erased, but that it can be redirected towards something meaningful.
Well, and here's what really stands out to me. This story would have been radical when it was first written down. Most ancient Near Eastern literature portrayed its heroes as nearly perfect. But this account shows all the mess, all the failure.
That transparency actually makes it more relevant today, doesn't it? We're still wrestling with questions about justice versus revenge, about how to handle family trauma.
Exactly. And recent studies in conflict resolution show that cycles of revenge actually activate the same brain regions as physical pain. It helps explain why these patterns are so hard to break without outside intervention.
So what you're saying is that this ancient story actually aligns with what modern neuroscience tells us about trauma and healing?
Precisely. And that's what makes it so powerful. It shows us both the reality of human nature and the possibility of transformation. Not through our own strength, but through something bigger than ourselves.
That's really the hope in all this, isn't it? That no matter how dark things get, change is possible. Though it usually requires both divine intervention and human willingness to change.
And perhaps that's the most relevant message for today. That healing from trauma, whether personal or collective, requires both grace from above and concrete actions on our part. Just like Jacob's family had to physically remove their idols and change their clothes.